Please introduce yourselves and your involvement in the industrial Internet of Things.
Sure. I'm Brad Miller. I'm a cognitive scientist at GE Global Research. I'm also co-chair of the technology working group at the IIC, which is responsible for the creation of the IIRA.
I'm Shi-Wan. I'm co-founder of Thingswise LLC. I'm a technologist specialized in system architecture, and I've been helping the creation of the industrial Internet reference architecture.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So what is a reference architecture in general, and why did the IIC create the industrial Internet reference architecture?
The industrial Internet reference architecture, IIRA in short, is a reference architecture identified the important architectural questions and common architecture patterns across industrial sectors. Because the industrial Internet is a relatively new concept and technologies, there's many challenges in applying these concepts and technologies across many different industrial sectors. The reference architecture is a means to provide a common starting points for making it easier to implement these new industrial Internet systems.
And who was the IIRA written for?
It was written for a number of roles. For example, if you are technology and solution providers, the IIRA provide a common architecture patterns from which you can build interoperable solutions and for the market. If you are implementer for the system, you will have you can use IIRA as a higher starting point to conceptualize your system, to think through important architecture questions. At the same time, you can using the reference architecture to identify product and services that can be used directly into the system without reinventing the wheel. By doing so, you can reduce your implementation risk, reduce costs and cycles.
I think we can think about the IIRA as having two fundamentally different types of audiences. So one is trying to build systems now, and it's intended to sort of help them understand how the technologies fit together if they're really trying to build a complete integrated industrial Internet system. And the other one is those who are saying, well, you know, technology is changing very, very rapidly, and there's going to be impact on the way I do things today. For instance, if we think about IoT in the consumer space, we're now enabling people to, as an end user, take their devices, hook them together in ways that the people who designed those devices didn't think of ahead of time. And that's starting to happen in the industrial space as well. We're getting factory managers who say, well, I've got 10,000 sensors in my factory. Why can't I hook this thing up, you know, that's sensing temperature to my water pump over here? The problem is that today we certify things. So we go through these massive amounts of analysis to understand what the effect is when we start hooking things up, and then certify, yes, it's safe, it's secure, etc. But when we can start doing these things in an ad hoc manner, things like safety certifications go out the window. So one of the things I think we're trying to bring up in the IIRA is how things are changing, and make people aware that, you know, if they ignore it, it's going to eventually hit them like a freight train.
Now, how does the IIRA differ from other IoT reference architectures?
Clearly, this is about industrial systems. Industrial systems have many unique characteristics. For example, in the consideration of safeties, in the consideration of security, resilience, and the IIRA places a very strong emphasis in these areas. That's one key uniqueness in the IIRA.
We also look at things across various key system characteristics like reliability and safety and security. And I think one of the things that we've done in some of the chapters is some of them do take a sort of what can you do today view, and others are a little bit more forward-looking. So for example, dynamic composition of components. So yeah, today there aren't too many products in this space, but eventually these will be tools that will essentially allow you to say, I've got a goal, I've got a desire, here are the requirements for creating this thing, and it will automatically assemble the pieces that are needed to provide that solution. So the IIRA is kind of fairly well balanced in the sense that, you know, it's addressing things that we can do now, but it's also pointing toward the future. We don't want to, you know, the industrial internet is probably going to live on for the next 20, 30 years. We don't want to create something that's so myopic that, you know, in 2 years it's obsolete.
And can you maybe talk to the structure of the IIRA?
As a tool, IIRA is designed to help the system designers to conceptualize the system. When you consider an industrial system, it's very often it's a very complex system. There's many intervening concerns. The question is how to analyze these concerns systematically. So the IIRA is intended to help in this aspect by providing a structure by which the reader can start thinking about these system concerns in a systematic manner by classifying similar concerns into their groups. We call this group of similar concern as system viewpoints. And within these, each of these system viewpoint, the reader or the designer of the system can start identify the resolution of these concerns and iteratively resolve them from viewpoint to viewpoint. One thing I want to emphasize is in the IIRA is the consideration of business questions, because industrial systems tend to be very expensive to build and take a long time to deploy. And once deployed, they will work for many years. And because of these, the business question is a very important question to ask. IIRA has one particular viewpoint. Want to address the business questions from the very beginning in the conceptualization of a system. And the business question we suggest the user to consider include what vision do you have in building up such a system, and what is the value this system going to bring into your business, and what are the system capability must be available to support the business value. Question like this is the first set of questions we want to ask. And then the IIRA also provide the so-called usage viewpoint, in which the architect can start evaluating the kind of usage scenario in an analytic fashion to identify the usage in which the system, the business capability can be supported. And from there, we drill down to the next level of concern, what function must be available in supporting those usage viewpoint, and finally, how this function will be distributed across the network of components. So the structure of IIRA provide an iterative process in which system concerns will be identified and addressed, eventually arrive at a point that a system architecture will be available for implementation.
In addition, we look at specific key system concerns. As I mentioned before, we've got resilience, we've got reliability, we've got safety, we've got security, et cetera. And then we also take some cross-cutting concerns. For example, what do you do when your controls starting getting more intelligent? What do you do about data management? And a lot of these things, you know, can't be easily categorized into just one viewpoint, into just one functional block of the architecture. Instead, you know, everything has to come together in order to support these things. So I think we've done a pretty good job of separating out all of these areas, and in fact, we're going to be over the coming months coming up with more detailed treatments of each of them. But the IIRA brings them all together to give you this sort of coherent, hopefully coherent understanding of the Gestalt.
Okay. Now, finally, why should anyone download and adopt the IIRA?
Well, if I'm a business owner or a system architect and want to understand how whether or not it makes sense to create an IoT system, and what kind of important questions I want to ask first, and instead of starting from scratch, an IIRA will be a very good starting point, and as a useful tool, a guide for you to think through those questions. And by doing so, you provide your own answers to those important questions, and from there, you iterate through the process to arrive an architecture for your system that you wanted to build.
Right. I think one of the first things we learn in philosophy class is it's not the answers, it's the questions that are important. And you know, the IIRA does try to lay out these questions, and some of the questions are really intended to make you think a little bit. Technology is changing rapidly, as I've said before, and you know, being able to understand that as controls become more intelligent and more autonomous, it also means that you have less direct control over them. They are going to be acting in ways that you know, you may not be able to predict, especially as we start adding, let's say, machine learning and other kinds of capabilities into these systems. They're going to be more autonomous. They're going to be more automated. And that implies also that, well, then how do I control their behavior and make sure that they remain safe, especially if they get less and less deterministic over time. If I have a resilient system, so it's able to recover its capabilities after some sort of casualty, something broke, you know, the disk drive failed, now the question is, well, how's it going to behave in that degraded circumstance, and what's going to happen as it's sort of rebuilding its capabilities? And I think most systems today, we don't think that way. I mean, they're either broken or they're working fine, and if they're broken, you know, you go get them fixed, and you otherwise don't touch things. If we've got systems that are really going to have very, very high uptime, and also this capability of sort of saying, well, I'm going to get the mission done no matter what. Well, it may be getting the mission done in ways that today we don't really expect. And I think that's sort of an important viewpoint to have when you're looking through the IIRA. It's kind of trying to bring these issues up for you to think about.
Excellent, fellas. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.